Today we're going back in time to the 1980s, and we're taking a look at a knife that can also be considered a multi-tool. But chances are slim to none that TSA will let you carry it on a plane. I'm talking about the knife used by John Rambo in the movie Rambo First Blood. Could this be considered one of the best fixed blade knives for survival based on its features and specs? What are its pros and cons? We'll go over that and more in today's video. First, let's take a look at the features and specifications of this really awesome looking knife. This one here is made in Taiwan. This measures in total 14 inches in length. The blade itself measures 9 inches and the handle measures 5 inches. The blade thickness is 1/4 inch. Just by looking at this knife, you would think it would be a perfect knife for survival, especially out in the wilderness. But let's go deeper into the specs to find out if it really is the ideal knife you want to be carrying with you when out camping or hiking. As mentioned, this has a 9-inch stainless steel blade with a matte satin finish, which also includes some sawing teeth on the top. I believe this is 420 stainless steel, which is not bad at all. Just as long as you maintain it sharpened, it should work just fine. Next, you have the saw. This one here comes with 12 teeth that begin to widen as you move down. The teeth are quite thick by the end, and it works just okay. But you have to put in a lot of effort to cut through some timber. I'm not saying it's not possible, but you will spend a good amount of time and energy, which is something you don't want to be doing when out in the middle of the woods. But if you look at the bright side, by the time you finish sawing through that timber, your arms are probably going to look just as muscular as Rambo's. Moving down, you now have a Phillips screwdriver on one end and a flathead screwdriver on the other. While these are always useful to have, I can see how these can be just a little uncomfortable to use. If you're planning on unscrewing multiple long screws, this would be a nightmare to use for that. I can see how this can be useful to tighten loose screws, but it would be more for an emergency type of situation, and that's about it. Now you also get some lashing hose, which can be used to securely tie your knife to a stick, or you can use them as a lanyard to hang your knife. The handle is a hollow handle, which is wrapped with some green nylon cord. On the bottom of the handle, you get a butt cap that has an O-ring that seals and protects the hollow handle from getting any water inside, which is great because you want to make sure whatever is inside stays dry. On the inside of the butt cap, you get a cool little compass, which is a must-have when you're out in the wilderness. And you also get a survival kit, which is also important to have with you at all times. The survival kit comes in a small plastic tube, and it includes a blade, fishing gear, some matches, and a needle. But you can always swap those out for whatever you prefer. So here's some shots that we got when we tried it out. Obviously, the knife itself works pretty good. I mean, it goes through those branches like nothing. This also cuts pretty good through some cord. And it actually holds its sharpness pretty good. You're able to chop easily through those branches. Small branches, medium-sized branches. These are probably about 1 inch, maybe a little bit less. The saw, however, I had a real hard time. I couldn't even cut through this 1x4. It works, but you have to put in a lot of work, right? You have to put in a lot of force, a lot of energy, which is something you don't want to be doing. You don't want to be wasting your time and energy trying to cut through some lumber, some logs, whatever it is you're cutting, right? You want to save that energy. So it's probably not the best choice, in my opinion, when it comes to the saw. The knife works perfectly fine. The saw, not so good at all. And I mentioned earlier that it works okay. Yes, but obviously you have to put in a lot of effort. It'll get the job done eventually, but you have to put in a lot of effort. Now that we've gone over all the specs and features, could this really be considered one of the best fixed blade knives for survival? And what are its pros and cons? For the pros, you get a good blade. The blade itself works great. As mentioned, as long as you sharpen it, it'll work for many things like chopping through some branches, to cut some rope, cutting small twigs, endless uses for a good knife. The compass is probably the second most useful item in this knife, which can always help you in an emergency if you get lost. So that is a major pro, since a compass is extremely necessary. Now let's take a look at the cons. First con is the hollow handle. When you're out camping, hiking, or whatever it is you're doing in the wilderness, it is important you have a reliable knife with a reliable handle. This handle will probably not be as reliable. I would have preferred that it was a full tang knife. This knife's tang is about 1 to 1.5 inches long. However, it looks to be a screw-on tang. If that's the case, then it increases its reliability, but a full tang is still preferable. Because if you're planning on using this to axe through some thick timber, at a certain point, a knife with a small tang is going to become weak and eventually the blade will come off from the handle. This is why I believe a full tang is the better option. Next con is the sawing teeth. which are not the most ideal. The teeth have a hard time sawing through timber, and I believe it has a lot to do with the design. But we know that they were going for a really cool looking knife. I don't think its performance was a priority. Another con is the screwdrivers, which are also not the most ideal or useful. Plus, I find them somewhat dangerous because of how the blade is moving around when twisting a screw. But based on functionality, it is not meant to replace a regular screwdriver at all. Overall, I wouldn't mind carrying it with me at all. It's a really awesome looking knife. You don't have to use the rest of the tools if you don't want to. The knife alone is more than enough for many things. The rest of the tools are just a bonus. You want to make sure though that you replace that O-ring when it comes time to replace it, because that's probably like the only thing that'll give out. I've seen a few replicas out there, and I can say that if you're going to get yourself one of these, it would be best you just do a little research to find out what type of steel it's made of, and if the tang is a screw-on or not. Because since it's a hollow handle, a screw-on would be a better choice. Obviously a full tang would be much better, but like I said, this is a hollow handle knife. Could this be considered one of the best fixed blade knives for survival based on its features and specs? It just comes down to your situation, on how you'll be using it, and obviously what steel the knife is made of. So it can be useful, but if you're going to be using it to split wood, it's going to take a beating. And because it's not a full tang, the chances of it getting damaged increase. I don't think it's one of the best options. I prefer a full tang knife, but like I said, it just comes down to what you're looking for. Anyways, let me know what you think. Is this your ideal knife for the wilderness, or which would you prefer? Thank you for your time. I'll see you in the next one.